and the USA in England's second World Cup group game, which means that if they avoid a 4 deficit defeat to Wales, they will qualify into the next round of the group stage. Essentially, it will mean that England qualify for the next round, which is positive, but it was a very drab affair. I'm drawn by Brian Daigle and Danny Kiriakou in what was a pretty poor evening's football, where I think England had one shot in the whole second half and 5 shots overall. Obviously, we did avoid defeat, which is positive, and we did keep a clean sheet. But if anyone looked like they were going to score throughout, USA were the ones on top. They were the ones forcing the issue. England being very pragmatic, not giving anything away, not forcing the issue at all. And it was a very frustrating game. But on the flip side, we have seen similar. For example, in the Euros, we drew 0-0 with Scotland in our second group game, and then we went on to make the final. And I remember after that performance, there was a big foray and there was a lot of criticism. And rightly or wrongly, that's what happened. And we ended up, it was okay. We ended up getting through the group and getting to the final. But what does that performance represent to you? I'll start with Brian.
Yeah, huge disappointment. Huge disappointment. I wanted us to go into this World Cup the group stage and get 9 points out of 9 and send out a statement that we're here to really compete and mix it with the best of them. And after seeing that Monday, yes, it was Iran. That was such a poor display. Poor display. Now people start talking of whether it's people have played too much. The same team started the same 2 games. It was just very, very poor. And if I had to say there was a better team, I'd say it was America. The only positives you can take is, like you said, barring a 4-goal deficit, we're through. Defeat, we're through. And as I said, the standout player by a country mile was Harry Maguire. Another positive to take. The rest, I just think that was one of the dullest English performances I've ever seen.
But who would you appropriate blame to this performance? Was it Southgate being too pragmatic? Did he set up the team not to go forward, or do you think maybe the players weren't executing Southgate's plan as well as they could have? What do you reckon, Danny?
Yeah, I think maybe it was a little bit pragmatic. I think the players just looked a little bit off today. All of them did. It just reminded me of a Conte performance with this season, where we've seen it, where they're just not placing their final ball is off. Then they're not passing properly. They're not really making movements to run into space, and you can see how many times did Kane get on the ball and he's looking around. There's no one there. He's held up the ball. He's got no runners around him, and they just lose possession because they haven't got enough players. And what the US team were doing, they were pressing us so high, and they were pressing us constantly throughout that game. They couldn't get their game going. The England team, not at all. And I think they lost a lot of opportunities on the wing because they tried to go a lot of the time through the centre, and it just wasn't working really.
Yeah, it was definitely a frustrating performance. In the first half, obviously, England did have a couple of moments. Saka pulling back to Kane, whose shot was blocked, and then Mason Mount had shot the edge of the area, was saved by Tottenham. USA probably had the best chance of the game with McKennie volley near the penalty area, which blazed over the bar. Talking about US in this one, are you surprised maybe they didn't try and force the issue and maybe go for it a bit more? Do you believe that they were going for it and England were just too good defensively for them?
I think as well, you look at it, America were a lot more direct, a lot more. They were going for it. They just couldn't break down the disciplined backline we had. Then you've got to look at it. Do they think, do we risk it against England or do we give it everything? And what, like you said, is now a playoff. Who would have thought with Iran? And they can go full pelt and as direct as they were in the first half of the Wales game. Maybe there was a bit of it. Do you know what? They see this game
maybe
out.
if they throw a bit more caution to the wind, they can go into that Iran game with a draw being only needing a draw rather than now where they need to win.
No, with that you're right, but then you've got to think about this and the management, everything that's at stake for the whole team. And you play the odds, don't you? And maybe they just thought...
I think you're right. I think they had an eye on that Iran game, that if they can get another point in this game, then they can go into that game feeling that they can go and win and they get 5 points.
But it doesn't make a difference because if they would have lost, a win still puts them through against Iran.
True, but I think they went for it as best as they could, but with keeping their kind of organisation still the same, so not letting England have too much, and they did. Tactically they played really well, and they were the better teams in terms of the football, the directness of out the two teams, and I think they just wanted to make sure that they could try and play their best as they could, but without having to open up too much to let England have too much opportunity. And you saw it because how many times when England got in the ball, you saw so many players drop back and they had like nearly everyone behind the ball defending to stop England trying to do anything. And that's why England couldn't really do much because they were just defending very well.
So to add to that as well, it's the Antonio Conte saying, isn't it? Is if you don't win, don't lose.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it was.
And I think confidence and mentality of the Americans, should they have got another defeat, or got a defeat, sorry, they drew against Wales, may have done more to them psychologically than what it could have done on the pitch. So we'll have to wait and see. But
fair enough. Harry Kane. Obviously, second game in a row, I think he hasn't had a shot on target now. Obviously, did get 2 assists in the game against Iran. Didn't get any assists, obviously, in this game, given that there was no goals. What did you make of his performance? Is he looking lackluster, or do you still think he is getting let down by his teammates? What do you reckon?
Okay, so for me, we've got to call it. Today, Harry Kane was poor. He had flashes, he had bits, but the reason I think he's poor is because, as people say, going into this tournament, he is levels above anything else we've got, and we were playing very, just any creativity or any spark we looked for him. As you saw in the second half, every time he was in the box, there were 2 men on him.
But there are moments as well, like he plays a ball, like, as you said in the second half, he plays a really good ball behind Saka, then Saka plays a ball into the box, and then
no one's
there because Kane had to be the one to play the ball to him. So, if there was another player,
if there was a
Grealish,
a Madison,
Foden, him playing the ball through to him, then Kane could have been there.
Exactly. That's what we're lacking. Our creativity looks like we expected to come from, like Tottenham, we expected to come from Kane.
Yeah.
The goal scoring, we expected to come from Kane. The guy needs some help. And we all know he's played a hell of a lot of football. And I think he just needs someone up there to put the balls through to him. Like, if he gets these chances, we know he's going to take them.
But in terms of Kane, obviously, there's always going to be, he is our captain, and there's always going to be focus on him. But I remember in the group stage last year, there was even calls to drop him after 3 group games because he hadn't got a goal, and he went on to score 4 goals in the next 3 knockout games. Is there an unfair focus on Kane, or do you think rightly he will get criticised for his performance, or do you think that he did the best he could with what he got?
Yeah, I think he can do better, but it wasn't just him today. It was everyone. You could see it. Everyone was the same. Like, it wasn't. There was moments where he played some good passes, and there was moments where he played some really bad passes. But it was the whole team. It's like watching Tottenham, where he might pass it into, say, Saka once or Mason Mount once, and their first touch was awful, and the ball they just lost possession. I think this game for me was crying out for someone like a Foden. I think it needed someone who is very technically gifted. Yep. And very good on the ball, and they needed someone who was direct. And it got a little bit better in terms of the directness, a little bit. I'm not saying a lot when Grealish came on, but it wasn't enough. Like, you could see they gained a little bit more control because America, the US team, weren't really dominating as much as they were when Henderson came on. But yeah, I think it's just one of those games where the players were off. The USA didn't really want to lose the game. England didn't really want to lose the game.
And it was time wasting at the end, weren't they?
They
both
of them
for
were.
The draw.
Yeah, they both were. You could see that they weren't really going for it, both teams. Because I think if both teams were going for it, you would have seen a different game, a more exciting game. You could compare it to the Wales game. Both teams were going for it in that game, and both teams had good chances in that game, whereas we really didn't.
Will Stewart has put in a comment, and we'll discuss it. He says, I don't know, lads. Our midfield outplayed your midfield, and that was the only difference today, really. Was the big difference maybe the energy that McKennie, Adams and Musa brought to US, which Mount, Rice and Bellingham, for one reason or another, weren't able to match?
Yeah, definitely. I said it earlier. The biggest thing I saw about the US team today was the energy levels.
Yep.
It was much higher. It was constant pressing us, and I think that stopped us playing our game as well. I'm not saying we have a style or a way of playing, but in terms of what they can do on the ball, it just kind of maybe it kind of knocked their confidence a bit because they were the US team were in their faces all the time, and whenever they were on the ball, they were trying to play it forward progressively, and they were trying to attack as much as they could, and I think that's what really changed it a little bit.
I think with Will's comment as well, you've got to add that right back Dest. He brought a lot. I was very, very, very impressed with him. And yeah, that they overran the midfield, but like we said, in that second half and at times in the first half, when they were attacking, they looked like they were doing it with a purpose. They looked like they wanted to create something. They wanted to play that risky final ball where we were just literally playing around and just waiting for that slip to try and punish it and get the force an error. And America were like, no, we're going to go for it. We got faith in ourselves. And like I said, the better team for me were America.
Yeah, well, they didn't end up winning though. Still finished 0-0.
Yep.
I'll leave you with this one tweet we can discuss, and we'll end it. But Dan Kilpatrick says England booed off at Al Bayt in the stadium. The bigger picture is that England are still well placed to qualify in a result which mirrors their second game in the Euros, which was a 0-0 against Scotland. Nonetheless, the US exposed a number of flaws in England and leaves Southgate with big questions. When it comes to Southgate, there's always going to be a split opinion on him, obviously, about whether he's doing a good job or not. Is that fair assessment? Did he expose big flaws, or is it maybe, or are we reading too much into a result where, just like the game against Scotland, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really mean much to how we performed in the tournament?
I think what you've got to remember with this as well, how mad, not saying everyone, but how mad you saw on social media and the actual media when we won 6-2 against Iran. It was like we just battered Brazil.
Yeah.
I was like, there we go, we're going to do it. We're going. Is
that fair? I don't know if that's true.
Come on, if you looked at it, there was so much going on. This result, like I said, if we were to get a draw and have a poor performance, I'd rather be in the group stage when we've got one win in the bag and we can get it out of the way. There are big set of questions over Southgate, isn't there? No matter what happens, a lot of people say this is final tournament, wouldn't they? Regardless of unless we actually win the thing. But yeah, I think there's some substitutions he could have made earlier to change this game, but I think he really was focused on that draw. Who am I to judge or know for a fact? But I would have expected more in a game like this.
But does the performance expose big flaws in Southgate's system, or is that too much to read into a group stage game where we're still very well placed?
Maybe a little bit. I think there's always that question, isn't it, over Southgate?
You know, we win against Wales, this game's forgotten, isn't it?
Probably. Because then when you look at overall, it's 2 wins and a draw. You haven't lost.
You're through, and you're probably through top as well.
Yeah, 7 points. It's not a bad turnout.
Not necessarily we are going to win, but obviously now that we do have to get a result, I'm sure he is going to play. He's not going to rest any players, so I'm sure it's going to be a strong team.
I'd like to see him change it up a bit. I'd like to see him change it. Maybe start Foden and maybe rest like.
Do you reckon he will change it?
Probably
or
not.
Do you reckon he'll keep it the same?
When you know you go into this game knowing that just escape a 4-goal deficit defeat and you're through, surely we've got the confidence as a nation and him as a manager to say I can play anyone in that squad. And we ain't going to lose 4-0 to Wales. And for the longevity and the fitness of these players, I would make a few changes. Not saying they have to, like, if you take, I'm just saying Kane. Let's take Kane. If you were to take Kane out, it doesn't mean you take him out and don't play him at all. You say 20 minutes, go on and get some get some legs on, keep your everything ticking over and come on and change.
Would you not
again.
Start Kane against Wales?
I would.
You would?
Yeah,
I don't know if I would. I don't know, and only because the amount of football he's played for Tottenham, we don't. If we needed to win by 3 goals, then he starts without a shadow of a doubt. But barring an absolute catastrophe, we're through.
Yeah.
So like we're saying, we're talking earlier saying how Kane needs rest in certain games where we don't think we need him. We're both saying that, and I don't think England necessarily need him in a game where avoid a 4-0 defeat or a 4-goal deficit, you're through.
Why would you stick with Kane now?
Because I think the way that England's set up, it's like everything tries to go through him, isn't it? Really, they tried. I think someone like Callum Wilson, if he's going to start, I don't think he's got the same type of hold-up play as Kane. He's more
different to him, won't they?
They would, but I just don't know if they play as creative when Kane's not on the pitch. Because I think they do try to look for Kane for that hold-up play. They do try to look for him to start the attacks and get the ball moving. So
for a change, Daddy, if England were to experiment in any game without Kane or without any of the
maybe
with Kane,
I think
there's a game where as long as you don't lose by 4 goals, you're through.
I think you're right, but I just think Southgate's not that type of manager.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if he starts the same 11 again, and I think that's what people get annoyed about, because you think this is the type of game, maybe you can change it up by like 3 or 4 players.
Yep.
Try to give some other players a chance. I reckon he'll start Kane and then he'll come off later on as the game goes on. Because if it's looking like they're going to draw a game, maybe he takes him off. But if it's looking like they could lose the game, I don't know. It depends on what's going on in other results during that time as well.
All right.
But
I'll leave you with one more super chat, and then I think we'll end it. Will Stewart again says, "Problem is, I forgot we even had a number 9. We may try and play that final ball, but no one is there to do anything with that final ball. I would take Donovan or Dempsey in their 40s right now, which I kind of feel him because of there was a lack of presence for the US today up front. But
there's a members chat as well
and there's a members chat.
Erica Green. She said McKennie was class today.
So. Let's get him. And there are rumours flying around about McKennie. I think he did impress today, didn't he? He was good.
He was good.
Although he should have scored.
Wasn't impressed with him against Wales. Was impressed with him this evening. And like I said, I haven't seen a lot of McKennie. I take a lot of what Will Stewart says with McKennie. And if what Will says gives me a lot of confidence with this player. But yes, the Wales game was the first time I've seen him with the eye test. I was like, but you can't judge a player after one game. This game was a much better performance, and I can see what Will's saying.
I see what he's saying, but I just don't know if it's the type of player we really need, really.
Defenders.
Yeah.
So we all can agree on that. But that is the end of the stream. That was your instant match reaction. England have drawn 0-0 to the US. Not a great game, but bigger picture, we are still in a good position and we're pretty much through to the next round. So not a disaster, but wasn't a great 90 minutes to sit through. So we have a right to be frustrated with that, I think. But let's hope for an improved performance against Wales in the next game coming up. And bigger picture, I think we're doing all right. We're in a good stage in the group, probably going to qualify as group winners if things go our way. So no need to panic. But I think questions are rightfully going to be asked after a poor display like that. But Brian and Danny,
always a pleasure, brother. Always a pleasure.
Coming and do the watch along. Thank you for all you guys in the chat for all your comments and super chats and views, and really appreciate all the support. That was your live watch along for the England USA game. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, England.
Come on, England.